Welcome back, everyone, to the weekly Armchair Sports Talk podcast. This is our debut of the Straight from the Cliff podcast. This is our weekly Manchester United Academy podcast, where we'll be covering all things Manchester United from under 23 to under 18 level each week. This is going to be pre-recorded live to YouTube and also to our audio platforms coming soon to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So this weekly podcast is going to consist of the three of us talking here this week and every other week about all things Manchester United Academy. So to the right of me, joined by Mr. Dillon Donnelly for United All Day and Stretty News. And also below Dillon, we are also joined by weekly Armchair Sports Talk podcast regular and resident Mr. Shane Dowley. Come to you first, Dillon. How are you? It's been a while since you've been on the podcast. How have you been keeping lately during this kind of lockdown?
Yeah, all good. Just trying to get back into, some normality. Back to work now about 2 months, and my writing has kind of taken a bit of a back seat, trying to get that work-life balance in. But hopefully now with the new season starting soon, and 3 or 4 weeks pre-season games starting, excited to be doing a podcast, especially on the academy, which is not something that's usually covered with yourself and Shane going forward.
Yeah, 100%. And look, me and Shane are always discussing the academy, and I thought it'd just be a great idea to kind of diverge into the academy and kind of look at development, look at performances, kind of look at kind of the overall build of the academy, because it's been something that's been kind of a shining light, especially in the last 3-4 years. So definitely something that we can discuss, and definitely something our viewers can definitely get engaged in when these do get released. Shane, I haven't talked to you in 2 days. How are you feeling?
No, not too bad. No, good. Like Dillon said, excited to start this because, like you were saying, to something we've kind of always discussed, but haven't really been able to go into much detail with it kind of being on because we usually cover just the first team. So whenever we do talk about the academy and the under 23s, it's never that much in depth. So it's nice to actually allocate a show to it and get to go into it in more detail, because it isn't talked about that much really. And I think especially at this time, I'd have some really nice players in the under 23s and that we're talking about. So it'd be nice.
Yeah, 100%. And I'd like to kick off obviously our first kind of topic for our first podcast here today. It's obviously last season for our underage teams, the under 18s and 23s, we've seen a lot of kind of standout performers in the academy, kind of players like Hannibal, Shola Shortire, Charlie McNeil, Joe Hugill, Joe Amad Diallo briefly when he first came in. His debut against Liverpool was one of the best academy debuts I've ever seen. But yeah, like as I kind of touched on, kind of the last 3 years of the academy, I believe under Dempsey and all the others who work in the academy, and since kind of the appointment of Solskjaer, we've kind of seen the academy been highlighted a lot more. Dillon, I'll come to you in terms of like last season. You look at the both 23s and 18s. Who would have been like the standout performers? Because like you always see social media, see a lot of reports, scouting reports on certain players, and you see clips of these players. But who for you kind of stood out to you from like the 18s and the 23s?
I think from the 18s. Two fellas that you've already sort of like name dropped, Charlie McNeil and Hugill, both strikers, both different type of strikers. Especially McNeil, very excited by him after we signed him from the Noisy Neighbours, Robinho's club, who we didn't know existed. I think for 1.5 million at 17, he's going to be 18 in September, and last season he's 26 goals in 33 games for the 18s. Like his numbers are, he's got a few dodgy celebrations, mind you. I've seen him. I think he played to the camera. I think he's a bit of a showman from some of the comments that he came out with after that Liverpool game. But McNeil for the under 18s definitely. He looks like an old fashioned centre forward. He's very smart. He plays off the last shoulder. He kind of reminds me of Michael Owen a little bit, the way he plays. And then Hugill as well, Joe Hugill, who was with I think he was with Sunderland before we got him 2 seasons ago. But he started in the 18s. He's another one that's not even 18 yet. He's 18 in October. I've actually saw a few pictures of him. He's in with the senior squad at the minute. I think he's been on the creatine and weights this season. I think he looks.
Yeah, he's really kind of filled himself out.
Yeah,
hasn't he?
he's filled himself out. But like his numbers last season for the 18s, he got 6 and 6, and then he went up to the 23s and he got ridiculous numbers. He got 10 goals in 21 games for the 23s. So he's playing. He's only 17 and he's getting those sort of numbers at 23 levels, where you both know that the 23s is very competitive, and there'll be a lot of players that are first team players that are playing in the 23s trying to get into a match rhythm or recovering from injury. So the level of opposition in the 23s would be very good. So if he's getting them numbers at 17, what could he get with another 2 or 3 years and a loan to develop him? I think the two of them are definitely going to be first team stars in the future.
Yeah, definitely 100%. And one thing I like about Joe Hugo is how he used his frame. So like when he's shielding the ball and when he holds up the ball, and like his finishing is quite good in the air. And you mentioned that like he's after filling out. I've seen the training pictures. So there's 9 academy players in the in the first team squad for this preseason, which I think is remarkable. I think it's great for their development being around experienced players like the Matiches, the Matas. So I know all the first team players like the Pogbas, the Brunos, they're all obviously resting from the Euros, but to kind of have that kind of invaluable experience to be around experienced heads is going to benefit them from the 23s for the 18s and kind of to up their game, but also a mentality change. I think that is something that's very, very important for these players. Look, for myself, I think for me last year, I think Hannibal showed really great potential in the under 23s last season. Someone for me, who I think he has that X factor. He can beat a player. He can take the ball on a half turn. His ball control is very good, and he's someone for me who's definitely a standout performer in 23s. The 18s last year, like Charlie McNeil. Again, you said it. We signed him from the other side of Manchester. He just has that arrogance about him that you just know if his development keeps continuing, he's going to be a top player. If not the Premier League, but definitely elsewhere. And like, look, I think he's someone who, if developed right, can be a Manchester United number 9 going forward. I know we've the luxury of having Mason in the first team. We've seen his development from 17s to 18s to 23s to first team. Like that goal scoring record he had coming up was remarkable. I think McNeil can follow suit in that level of development, and definitely someone who can be a future Manchester United player in the attacking areas. And like one player just obviously like to mention, just to give kind of a shout out to as well in terms of the 23s. For me, is Ethan Laird. I know he went to MK Dons, second half last season on loan and played quite well there. Definitely for me, someone who's a one to maybe kind of look out for maybe next season, but another kind of good performer. And it kind of showed why Brandon Williams was pushed over to left back when he was in the under 23s, is because the emergence of Ethan Laird. But they're kind of standout performers for me, kind of last season. And Shane, for yourself, looking at the 23s and 18s last year, is anyone else who kind of stands out for you? I know you're high on a couple of other players.
So there's obviously like the main players, like the two you said, McNeil and Hugel, and then you have Hannibal and Ahmed. That was just for a limited time. He was playing the 23s, but I think his first name is Reece Devine. So like he started off in the 18s last year and he was playing left back, and I think it was probably more so down to injuries in the under 23s because they had a lot of injuries to the back four. So he kind of got a good few games towards the end of the season there, and I think he done well when he did play. He played most games at left back, but I think he played a couple at centre half as well.
That 23s team is kind of like an under 18s, under 19s team.
Yeah,
it's decimated by loans, injuries, and you know what I mean. So that shows you the pool of talent that they have.
Yeah, there was times last year when Ethan Galbraith was playing centre half in the 23s because the team was just so stricken by injuries. But like Reece Devine is not one of the more he's not one of the more popular names there, but from what I've seen of him, I've been impressed. He looks like he's decent on the ball. He does all the basics right. So he plays like a player that is playing beyond his age at the minute. So I think that's a really good sign as well. And just when you were saying about McNeil, what I really like about him is that he seems like his skill set is well rounded already. Like kind of similar, not that he's that similar player to Greenwood, but like him, he has a well-rounded game already at such a young age, where usually when you have these young forwards, you can very much see what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. And I think it's very rare to have a young forward that already has a kind of polished enough game already. So I think that's very impressive. But
there's that Norwegian guy as well for the 18s. I think he might. I don't know if he's met his debut for or played on under 23s yet. Is it Hansen Aaron? You know, the Norwegian guy. Have you seen him play for the 18s?
no.
They only signed him last season. He's meant to. I think if he hasn't played, he's meant to be a talent as well. So the academy is emerging at the minute.
The Dutch guy as well. I can't remember his name now. He's very short. He plays up front as well. He's meant to be very highly rated. But I've only seen him kind of coming off the bench for the under-23s. I haven't really gotten to see him start that many games in the 18s because I'd watch a lot more of the 23s than the 18s, to be honest. But yeah, he's another one that's meant to be very highly rated.
Yeah, that's Dillon Hugwerf, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And then you've got your boy, is it Igdal or Iqbal?
Sedan Iqbal.
Sedan Iqbal, yeah, he's a good player as well.
Yeah, he's definitely a promising one. And just seeing shout young Carly Savage as well. He signed his contract. He seems like he can be a good player Joe Ferris in the future. And like Shane mentioned, meeting Galbraith, I think again Northern Irish player. So he seems like he could definitely develop maybe as a defensive midfielder and a centre back. Like he's shown at a young age he can be versatile.
Yeah.
Obviously, we talked about Brandon Dillon off camera before. We've kind of went live, well, not live, but pre-recording. So it says live on the top left, so that's why I thought we were live. But like Brandon showed versatility last year, kind of deputising a centre back, right back, left back. Obviously, look, jury's out sometimes whether he's ready for first team, but he's still very young. But yeah, like I think the talent pool in this academy is exceptional, and like you look at academies across England, you look at Man United, and let's say you look at Chelsea. These two academies, like lead serious talent out, and you look at you look at Manchester United. Every matchday squad, there's always an academy graduate in the matchday squad, and that tradition is always continuing. Jose Mourinho now destroyed that tradition, but it's something that it continues to prosper. But I just want to touch on kind of the development of this academy over kind of a 3-4 year span, because I don't really want to harp back to Jose Mourinho's tenure at first team level, because look, it's something that no one really wants to remember. It was kind of a dark time at some stages. But when you look at the academy at that time under Mourinho, it was vastly neglected, and the structure of the academy was vastly neglected. Dillon, I come to you. Like, what do you make of the whole overall structure and the kind of the resurgence of the Manchester United academy in kind of the last 3-4 years? It's really kind of kicked off again. You can see the talent pool, though, is very deep now compared to what in kind of, let's say, previous years, though, post Ferguson. We're kind of seeing it being, in my opinion anyway, I think it's in the best kind of state it's been in since 2011, since that FA Youth World Cup team.
Yeah, well, I think a little bit of the problem that we've had has to lay the door off the great man Ferguson in ways, because he was that great at using his limited resources and, made players play out of their skin. He made good players become great players and average players become good players. He didn't really dip into the academy in his latter years, maybe a few here and there, Danny Welbeck and, Pogba, obviously, Jesse Lingard. But I think that the scouting was basically like an afterthought as he was winding down. And I think when Moyes came in, Moyes appointed a few people, and then we were playing catch up because City and Chelsea were throwing scouts and money at basically everybody. And then we appointed, there's a few different people. We had appointed, Marcel Bout. He was appointed. Now we've got, there's a guy, John Morta. He came in with Moyes originally. You had some Mourinho appointed. Jim McGuinness is still there. He was Fergie's scout, and then Mourinho appointed a Facandu guy, a Portuguese fella. So there was 4 or 5 people from different areas, and they've kind of all merged alongside Mark Dempsey and Morta. But I think, unfortunately, the main man who's done the guts of this work is not United anymore. I think Nicky Butt. I think he's done absolute Trojan work behind the scenes, and
he's
none of us, but none of us know the real reason. I think Nicky Butt wanted that job that Morta got, and I think his nose was put out of joint, and maybe he wanted to go and potentially cut his teeth at coaching, maybe at a higher level, or maybe try and get into a professional, like a first team setup, because he has the experience, he has the CV, and he's won everything in the game. But Butt's done a lot of good work. Our scouting has significantly improved across Europe, and what I found, what I think Solskjaer obviously is the key contributor to that, because he's getting that. But you see us now, we're targeting players. We bought Hannibal from Monaco for 10 million. We got Amad Diallo from Atlanta. He had only played 60 minutes of competitive football, senior football, and we had been scouting him for 18 months prior to that, because he was spotted by a United scout when he was 15 at an underage tournament. We bought Marc Jurado and Alvaro Fernandez. We bought them both from Real Madrid and Barcelona. United never done that before. We're buying 16-year-olds from Barcelona and Madrid. They usually do that to us. You know what I mean? Like Piqué, like we bought Piqué and then they buy Piqué back. But that just shows the intent that the club are going in. And now that Brexit has changed the rules on the home ruling players, British players and Irish players, they had to get basically as much like world-class or potentially world-class players in to stack the academy, because there's a limit now going forward as of next year. So I think the academy is in a great place at the minute, but that's down to, lots of years of trial and error. But Solskjaer basically, and Morta and Nicky Butt and Darren Fletcher and Dempsey and all of the boys behind the scenes deserve huge credit for, getting us. But we're still a long way off Chelsea and Man City in terms of that, but we are going in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. And you hit the nail on the head. Like the Solskjaer and Dempsey, like they've done. Nicky Butt, I think you said it. Like he done Trojan work behind the scenes. And look, when I heard he left, I not gonna lie, I wasn't happy, because like you've seen the impact he's had, and again, he's one of our own too. So obviously, when one of our own leaves the football club, it's always kind of a sad day, especially someone like Butt, who was a great servant, as you said, won everything at the club, and they kind of see what he's done behind the scenes. Obviously, John Murtaugh's moved on to kind of a more senior role in the football club. Yeah, it remains to be seen what kind of happens there. And like again, to see kind of this restructuring and all these like little gems get pulled out, like that, as you said, that scouting of Amad Diallo at 15 years of age, I think that kind of proves that there is things in place now. And you can nearly harp that back to first team level at this football club now, because gone are the days are where we plug out a player for a jersey sale. Do you know what I mean? Like the Alexis Sanchez, the world. I know people can argue maybe Jadon Sancho at the first team level is that kind of a sign to get jerseys in. You can debate that. I don't think is. I think he's a quality footballer and a good young player that fits the profile of what we want at this football club. But like you see this now, it looks like it's going a step in the right direction. You rightfully said there too. I think Chelsea probably at the moment, in terms of academy structure, in terms of their scouting network, in terms of their overall quality that they have at their academy level, I think they're doing bits there. And I think you look at our side, we're consistently improving. And let's see if this Brexit stuff happens. Does this change the way we kind of work with things? But I think we're stacked at the minute that for the next maybe 3, 4, 5 years, this football club's academy is going to be in a very good place, and long may it continue. I think so. I'm very happy to see the kind of progression of this academy. Shano, for yourself, just kind of touch on what we've been talking about. What would you make of the overall kind of progression of this academy in the last kind of 3, 4 years?
So I probably wouldn't keep my ear to the floor as well as you when it comes to positions and that, and the hierarchy of the club and all that. But the main name that seems to get most of the credit is Nicky Butt. I think everyone is kind of in agreement that he's done most of the work to overhaul the whole academy. Because there was a time, like, I know you could criticise Mourinho for not using some of the young players, but I think we're in agreement that there wasn't that much quality in the reserves in the 23s at the time. So that's another thing. But so I don't really have much to say. It's like, I think we're in agreement. Like, Nicky Butt seems to have done most of the work and he deserves credit for that. Obviously, Ollie deserves credit as well, because bar maybe Van Gaal, since before Fergie retired, he's using more players from the academy than anyone else.
I think that's a huge help. I think, is it maybe 9? I don't know. It could be 9 for first team academy graduates, or maybe 13 in his tenure. I'm not sure. Between 9 and 13. But touching on your point, Shane, there, I think this is the biggest change. And probably, look here, you both know I'm on the fence with Solskjaer, but I want him to do well. Obviously, he's a club legend.
Yeah, I think you are pretty much aligned on.
I think he deserves another season, and as long as he is financially back. But we have to give him credit where credit's due. There is that general progression now, and the pathway is evident there. It means, the saying goes, if you're old enough, you're good enough. Like last season, 25% of the academy graduates contributed over 25% of first team minutes. Like, take that as a stat. I just found that out earlier on. And he gave 5 homegrown players, so 5 academy graduates, their debut last season alone. Like, that's not what managers would do that over the span of 4 or 5 years at a club. So Solskjaer is giving players that opportunity.
And to be fair, I know Van Gaal used a lot of the reserves and young players. A lot of that was forced through injury, because the team was really hit badly with injury in his second year, so he was kind of forced into it. Where Solskjaer probably is the best squad since Fergie, and he's still playing more young players than anyone else. So I know there's times where I've been critical of him, where there's games where the likes of Mata and someone, they're getting minutes, and I'm thinking, why isn't Ahmed or Shartiri or someone getting them minutes? But realistically, you still need to keep all these players happy, and you need to keep them content. So you need to throw players like Mata and Daniel James minutes when you can, because obviously they're going to be less patient than a couple of teenagers, whatever. But I think, like, compared to his peers, like, I don't think anyone else gives young players a chance more often than Ollie does, to be fair to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Just kind of touch on Dillon, you've actually segued into the next thing I actually want to talk about, so thanks for that. The academy graduates in recent years, you've obviously seen Marcus Rashford, Mason Greenwood, Scott McTominay, Brandon Williams, Axel Tuanzebe, etc. Like, all these players who've kind of come in recent years. If you look at the current crop of the academy players now, when you look at the 18s, 23s, who do you think out of the current crop right now can maybe take a stab at the first team next year, make the jump into match day squads, and maybe get significant minutes next year? Dillon, I'll come to you first to that.
I think 2 players that me and Shane and yourself have touched on already. I think the only 2 realistic ones are, look, I think Hannibal, Mebry and Ahmed, I think they are first team players at the minute. I think Ollie fancies them as first team players, but I think at the minute academy players who've been out on loan, I think Jimmy Garner and Ethan Laird, I think they're the only 2 I can see potentially going into the first team.
I think Laird very much depends on whether we get a right back or not.
Yeah, but I think Ethan Laird, actually, I wouldn't have even put him out on loan last season, because I watch a lot. I'd watch him play with the under 23s. I love the way he plays. He's aggressive. He's so fast.
He's a sick player, man.
He lit up League One with MK Dons there. 25 appearances for them last season. He won 4 or 5 man of the match awards. I think he could push Wan-Bissaka on, and I think if he was able to get, like, realistically, he could get maybe 8 to 12 appearances next season, because Wan-Bissaka played something like 50 odd games last season. It
feels like he plays every minute.
Yeah, he plays every minute, every game, and look, he's trained, like, he's developed offensively, but I think offensively he's going forward. He gets a bit lost. He looks like he's afraid to go past halfway. Like, Laird's the complete polar opposite of that.
Yeah. I think going forward, he obviously is improving, and he's starting to do the right things, but it's obviously not natural to him. So it's always going to be capped at what he does do going forward.
Yeah.
Where I think Laird is just a different style, a fullback completely.
What I love to see Solskjaer do potentially. You might think I'm mad, but I love to see Solskjaer do. I'd like to see him play 3 at the back and play. He could play. He play Wan-Bissaka as the right centre back, and he could play Luke Shaw as the other left centre back, and Maguire in between them. And then Laird as a right wing back, and then I don't know who Tellez or Williams. I don't fancy, so I might go over. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe even Bailly or Lindelof. You can toss a coin because probably one of them will get injured in the warm up. But I think Laird definitely is an option. But I think Trippier, 40 million euros for him as a 20. I think he's 31. 31. Yeah, he's not worth that. I think he's worth.
Not that good anyway.
But he is, like, I see his value in the England squad. Like, he would be good for Champions League games away against tricky teams. And I think that the next player I'm going to touch on is Jimmy Garner. I think Jimmy Garner is probably one of the most naturally talented midfielders we've had in years. I think he realistically could be our long-term. He's very like Michael Carrick, reminds me the way he plays. He's a natural holding midfielder. He's got a brilliant range of passing. He's good positionally. He had 44 appearances last season combined in the Championship for Watford and for Forest, and he stood out in games. And that's a good level of football. The Championship has been described as one of the toughest leagues in the world to get out of. So I know the club are openly looking for him to get to a Premier League club this season. Probably to a new club coming up, maybe Brentford or something like that, to get him Premier League experience. But I think if he has a good pre-season, I can't see why he shouldn't be used as a first team player, as a squad rotation player.
Especially because we're so light in midfield as it is. I kind of see him more as a box to box than a DM, but just because we lack a DM, and I'm not sure if we'll sign one this summer, I think that could force Ollie's hand to just have. He might be forced into trusting him and giving him minutes in midfield, which I would like to happen, because I've kind of seen enough of some of these guys in midfield, like, so there's no.
I'd like to see a holding midfielder. I'd like to see us play with a proper holding midfielder. I'd like to see them try and McTominay there, as me and Keane discussed prior to going live on the pre-record. We like McTominay as a 6 because he can take control of the ball on a turn, and he can break the line. He's brilliant at breaking a press. But McTominay is limited in his range of passing, so he needs a ball player there beside him. But McTominay has all the athleticism and the attributes to be a good defensive midfielder. He just needs to work on his position. But if we could have Jimmy Garner and Nemanja Matic as his backup and his understudy, I think that could work potentially next season going forward.
Yeah, definitely could be. It just depends again on kind of what setup we go with next year. But the player who looks definitely poised to go out and on is Helen Mengi. Looks like he's going for a second spell under Wayne Rooney at Derby County. Obviously very unfortunate to get injured during his loan spell with Derby. He was really hitting the ground running. He was actually playing quite well, and he was helping them in their battle against relegation, which eventually they did kind of beat the drop on the final day. It was one of the most dramatic relegation scrap kind of final days I've seen in quite some time. But looking at Mengi going to Derby for a second term, especially under Rooney, under one of our own essentially, do you think he has the potential to maybe reach the next level, playing a full season in the Championship and hopefully, not getting injured?
Yeah, hopefully, because from what I've seen of him, he does look good, and the way Ollie talks about him, I think Ollie's a massive fan of. But, if Derby are going to be as poor this year as they were last year, I don't really think it's a great loan move for him. Like, I get Rooney's his manager there, so it's kind of nice to have an ex-United player there because, they'll obviously be talking about that and going back to United. But, I think I kind of rate him more than going to a Championship team that's going to be struggling to stay in the Championship, So, I don't know, like, I don't follow Derby that close, so I don't really know what they are going to be looking like coming into the Championship this year. Because I know that league is crazy that you could be fighting to stay in it the year before, and then you get promoted the year after, vice versa. But I don't know. I just think he's beyond fighting to stay in the championship.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, 100%. Dillon, what's your take on that?
Ted Mengi, I don't think Derby County's a good move from him. I think, touching on what Shane there is, I think it's a roller coaster. I think it's a bit of a merry-go-round. I think Mr. Wayne Rooney is probably the greatest footballer of our generation, but I don't think he's the greatest manager of his generation. He's very limited there. I can't see Rooney seeing out this season personally. Mengi was good, had 9 appearances before he got a bad injury. I think it was his quad or his hamstring, something like that. He went back to rehab. The only benefit he has there is he's got good coaching staff in with him, Rooney. He's got Liam Senior, who was a good pro, who played with Fulham. He's got Curtis Davis, Andrew Wisdom, and Craig Forsyth in there as central defenders. Curtis Davis had a great career. Andrew Wisdom was with Liverpool. They could offer him some insight and aid his development. You can see how his pre-season goes here, because if he has a few good games in pre-season, a couple more championship clubs could fancy him. Yeah. Like I'd like to see him go. I'd like to see him go to maybe Forest or somewhere.
Even Forest, Bournemouth, clubs like that.
Yeah, something like that. Like Scott Park or
just a more stable situation.
Chris Hughton. Well, Forest is only stable at the minute. God knows what. That's a bit of it's stable at the minute, but you'd like to see him go somewhere that like Chris Hughton's proven. Scotty Parker's going into Bournemouth. Scotty Parker's a good manager. He trusts players. He doesn't care what age they are. He'll put them in irrespective of age. So if he has 30, 35 games in the championship next season, which I think he's capable of, because he is raved about at Old Trafford. He's raved about. He's captained United in nearly all age groups. He's highly touted, and it's not often a centre half is highly touted in the academy. Look, Tuanzebe was highly touted, and so was Rashawn Williams. Rashawn Williams never made it. Tuanzebe is 25 this year, and he's not even played 100 appearances yet. He'll never fulfill his potential, in my personal opinion. I think he's a championship defender or lower table Premier League, maybe for a rotation player. I think technically he's a brilliant defender, but I don't think he's physically able to do it.
Yeah,
hence why Solskjaer's not trusted him yet. Do you know what I mean? But I think Ted Mengi, if he can go out, if he can get a loan, but that's what I like about Solskjaer. Solskjaer doesn't mess about. Jimmy Garner wasn't working for him with Cisco at Watford, pulled him straight away. He wasn't getting the game time, made a few phone calls and got him into Forest, and he was starting in Forest after the second week, and he was never present all season long. That's what the club are doing right. It's the same with Chong. Chong was at Club Brugge, didn't have a good first half of the season and pulled him, and then where he went to Werder Bremen, and then he had a good second half of the season with him. Do you know what I mean? And he's going to Birmingham now, so maybe they might look into Mengi to maybe go to Birmingham as well. Maybe if they double up players or triple up players, that you're used to somebody in that environment, because it is daunting for an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old, especially maybe from a foreign country, going off to another city in England, especially during COVID. They don't know other people. If they had somebody else that they could rely on, that they know from the youth system, that would be beneficial. But the club's doing the right things now at the academy, finally, and that's down to Nicky Butt. Prior to that, and more to now in Solskjaer. If a loan's not working, there's no point of wasting 9 months of that young player's career and his development. Move to another club where he will get the opportunity.
100%. You hit the nail on the head of that there, Dillon. 100%. Kind of looking at another recent appointment, kind of within kind of the club, Justin Cochrane. His role kind of has been explained that he's going to be between kind of doing a development role between the 18s and the 23s. He's kind of trying to give more flexibility to that. There's going to be obviously a clear path between the 18s, 23s, and the first team. Obviously, he's highly thought of. Obviously, he's previously of Tottenham. He was heavily linked with the England under-21 job between himself and Frank Lampard before he came to United. However, he's coming from the outside, obviously being at different clubs and stuff like that, coming into United's kind of development system. Do you think he can come in from the outside and kind of adapt his philosophy to kind of our traditions and our development system, Dillon?
100%. 100%. I know for a fact Gareth Southgate was looking at him prior to the Euros to come in as an assistant, but he went with Graham Jones from Newcastle, who's an exceptional assistant. And I don't think Cochran will be long with the academy. I think he'll be in the first team setup. I won't be surprised if he's in the first team setup within 18 months to 2 years. Had a decent career, played in the lower leagues. Played League Two a bit. Still only 39. Did a bit of played non-league and got on the coaching ladder when he was 17 or 18 and basically did his badges as he played. Spent 9 years at Spurs, working his way up, and then he basically got in as Spurs. He had the same thing. He was the player and coach development. He was basically head of that, and then he went into the FA. He got poached into the FA. He was basically headhunted by, I think is it Greg Dykes that's over the FA.
He was. I don't think.
Yeah. But when he was, I think him. Yeah, I think him and I'm not sure. I think it might have been a guy who was in with Steve Holland, a Hayes fella. The two of them, they were going around and they were basically trying to do everything under Southgate's guidance. Went to the FA, was with the 15s, 16s, and the 17s, and enjoyed great success there. And then he was highly touted to go for them jobs. I think he's worked at a high level with players between the ages of 14 to 23s at national and top level football. He's at Spurs for 9 seasons. He was in the FA for 2-3 years. So he understands, because he was a pro as well, he understands what it's like for players between the ages of 14 to 23. He knows what it's like. So he'll work with Neil Wood and Neil Ryan basically with the aim to maximise every player's potential. And he knows what players need and how they can fulfill their potential. So I think it's a good appointment, and I think he'll be very beneficial for the club to, basically figure out what every player needs to fulfill their potential.
Yeah, 100%. I think the fact that he's been in numerous roles, I think obviously for me, I always like to see, maybe I'm kind of romanticist in the sense that I always like to see like the Manchester United way always be kept and adapted to. But obviously, as a football club, you always have to be flexible and always
You're a legacy fan.
ideas. Yeah, hey, that term gets thrown around on Twitter. We're not going to go there. There's people who call themselves legacy fans, but they're absolute gone beans. We're not going to go there. I'm not going to get personal with certain people. We all know who they are. But yeah, like, look, I just always like to see the Man United way be adapted to and the culture of a football club be maintained. And I think that's very important. But look, he has a good CV. I think it's someone who can definitely come in and maybe help the development of this academy, and we can see it prosper and get stronger. Are you in that same boat, Shane?
Yeah, so to be honest, I didn't know who this guy is. I don't know anything about him, but that's why when Dillon was talking there, it was very interesting to hear what he said, because that's all I know. I only know what you're saying now. But yeah, like from what you're telling me, like it's a good appointment and I can't complain. But I don't really have much to say on it, because I didn't know who he was until tonight. So obviously, he seemed to have a fair idea. So
yeah, the key thing is that he has development phase experience with top clubs between those age groups. So he understands the role, and considering he was a pro, he knows, professional players have to sign a contract at 18. At 21, 1% of them make a professional. So he knows what players need to do to make it to that level, and especially at a club like Man United and at Tottenham Hotspur and at the English team. So he's working with high-level athletes. He has done, and he will be doing it. So he knows what makes players tick. He knows how to handle players' family situations, contract situations, agents, which are a big thing now. So he'll be able to help protect and develop basically all of the academy's players.
What I do like is that he's overseeing the 18s and the 23s, because I like that step between the two teams to be fluid, that players can step up and drop down as they like, because realistically they're all kind of going to be coming through together in kind of groups. So it's just good to build them partnerships and whatever on the pitch,
Yeah, 100%. And look, be interesting to see how this develops. And look, as Dillon said, he can maybe make that jump from the development side to the first team, because like we recently appointed Eric Ramsey as the set piece coach. Highly thought of. I'd watched a lot of the videos of kind of how he adapts his coaching philosophy. I'm very excited to see that at first team level. The final thing I'd like to touch on tonight, guys, just before we wrap up, is kind of not academy of present, but academy of past. Obviously, we've seen a lot of great players come out of this academy.
I dread this because it's very upsetting, man, to see like some of these players.
I think we're all going to have the same one.
Yeah, like players that sold us dreams, like, and it just
didn't work so basically,
for whatever reason.
An academy graduate that we've all highly thought of. I'm watching them in the academy, but when they made it to first team level, there's obviously other circumstances and managerial things and all other things that happens that they don't make it. I'm going to come to you first, Shane. If there's any player you've watched, let's say in the last 15 years at Manchester United, that came through the academy and you thought they were going to be a first team ready player, but it didn't materialize after a certain amount of time.
Like the obvious one is Ravel Morrison.
Yeah,
that's like it's so like he's so obviously the first choice. I didn't pick him because like it's been said, everything about him has been said, and like I've nothing else to add on that, But Adnan Januzaj sold me a fucking dream in his first year, and I thought this guy is his debut against, I think, was it West Brom at Old Trafford.
Sunderland, was it?
So I'm not sure. Was it West Brom?
His first start was Sunderland, but West Brom was his debut. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and he had a sick debut, and his whole first season under Moyes was just it was so good. And yeah, the game against Sunderland, you said, where he scored 2, I thought to myself, like, this he's the best player in the world. He's unbelievable. I just was so mad about him. And there was times at that season, I know that was a horrible season for the club.
The only glimpse of it.
No, I remember when we were playing Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, and we got bet 3-0, and I think Rooney and Van Persie were both out, and there was times there was like a period in that season where we were relying on Januzaj, like everything was going through him, and he had to step up and be the guy in that team, which is outrageous for an 18-year-old, but that's just what he had to do because no one else was doing it, and he was doing it well too. He had such a good season that year under Moyes, and for whatever reason, I think Van Gaal just wasn't the right manager at the right time for him. But I also don't want to excuse a player for not performing either. I think a lot of things go into it, especially when you're young. You can have all the talent in the world, but I think the situation needs to be right. The players around you in the squad, the manager, the coaches there, your living situation. Like, there's so many variables that go in, especially at a club as big as United. It seems like everything just kind of needs to fall in place for you to actually kick on and make a breakthrough. So for whatever reason, it didn't work out for him at United. But to be fair, he's gone on to have a decent career and performed well at other clubs. And I think that is very common with players that come through Carrington. And I think it's impressive too that there's a lot of players that come through Carrington and they don't make it at United, but they go on to have decent careers either in top flight football or the lower leagues. But either way, it's nothing to be snuffed at. Like, they go on to have good long career. Like, Phil Barsley is one that springs to mind that didn't make it at United, but he had a really solid career at a Premier League club, a couple hundred appearances. There's loads of players like that for United, but yeah, man, Januzaj broke my heart. I thought he was it.
Things were never the same after that Nando's meal.
No.
the 18 pound date. Look, Ravel Morrison, I think he takes the biscuit, doesn't he? Like, I remember watching him in the Youth Cup semi-final against Chelsea when we spanked him 4-0 and he got the opening goal. Just naturally, probably the best footballer I've ever seen in the academy. But James Wilson as well.
Oh yeah,
I think he's another player. Look, I think he's playing for Salford now, or he might still be with them. But I think had he not have done his knee, I think he could have forged a good career for himself. I remember we watched his debut. I think it was against Hull, was it? When Giggsy was in charge, he netted 2, was it?
Yeah.
He scored 2. he was brilliant. He was brilliant with the academy. And there's so many that spring to mind. Look, Will Keane, another brilliant academy player, prolific underage, got another bad knee injury. Look, it seems to be injuries as well curtail players' careers. I think James Wilson and Will Keane for me, because they were both naturally talented. How good, they were touted for greatness, but I think Wilson could have made the step up had it not have been for that bad injury. But obviously, Ravel takes the biscuit for this one, unfortunately.
Yeah, Ravel Morrison definitely takes it. Look, again, I watched him that 2011 team.
Yeah,
he was better than Pogba that year. I know Pogba was good. Pogba was very good in that team.
Morrison was so sick, man. He was just so sick, and it's upsetting hearing people talk about him now, and because everything that has to be said has been said, and it's a shame, like this, like that. His talent was wasted. He must be sick of hearing it, but man, it's a shame. What a player he could have been like.
Yeah, Ravel Morrison, though, he has a lot of psychological problems. Like, these footballers are human. That's what people don't understand. Like, he had to move away from home, and he was isolated, and he got in with the wrong crowd, and he was doing stupid stuff. And Ferdinand was trying to offer some guidance to him. He went to Italy, and then he went to West Ham, and he was in West Ham with Big Sam, and
Big Sam fucked him over,
No, but Big Sam actually got on with him, and then fucking David Gold released a statement to the Sun saying that he wanted a new contract and he refused to sign it, and he didn't. If anyone actually wants to listen to anything about Ravel, Rio Ferdinand did a very good podcast.
Yeah, that's
with
the
him.
interview I'm referring to as well. Yeah, it's good interview.
That's excellent. I realised the real Ravel. Yeah, but he's very misunderstood. Like, he actually is like a really nice lad.
Yeah.
But like, natural ability wise, he should have 60, 70, 80 odd England caps. He's miles better. He could cut off both of his legs. He'd be still better than Jordan Henderson. He is scary good.
Yeah,
he's scary good, man. Remember that fucking? Did you see that goal he scored for the England
under 21s?
Under 21s.
The game him and Zaha.
Yeah, the bicycle kick. The back heel. He's naturally he's the best footballer I've ever seen coming through the academy.
He's just a fucking baller.
He could have been a club legend, but look, he's look. There's loads of them. Look, he's a victim
of circumstance. I think you look at that, and it's a victim of circumstance.
Yeah,
I think that's what you nail it down to. I think for me, just quickly, just before we wrap up, one player that no one's mentioned is Camrick Bortwick-Jackson. For me, he sold me dreams. He sold me dreams going down that left-hand side. Like, seen him first couple of games he played. Like, he was a player who, like, he'd whip it. He was very good whipping in crosses. So he actually looked decent. I was thinking.
He needed indicators to change direction, lad. He makes Alex Tellez look like Alessandro Nesta. He's playing with Scunthorpe or somebody, is he?
A few of the lads that Van Gaal brought through, I thought were going to be so sick.
Tyler Blackett.
Yeah. until that Leicester game, I thought
him and McNair.
I thought he was so sick, and then that Leicester game was the end of a lot. The three
of us should have showed up that night in MK Dons there.
That was a nightmare. Remember that day? Jesus Christ, that was one for the books anyway. But Jesus Christ. But like, for me, look, he was one player who I thought could have been decent, but for whatever reason didn't work out. I think Varela is another one. I think he's another one, actually. Yeah, he's been a victim of injury. I think he's another person who's been a victim of knee injuries. Timothy Fosu-Mensah. He looked very good under Van Gaal when he came through. Like, I remember
he suffered as well from, he just never really nailed down a position either. Because I think in the academy he was a midfielder, and then remember when he first came through in Van Gaal's second season, he played a couple of games centre half, and then he was moved right back, and then he kind of that seemed to be where he was. Yeah, that seemed to be where he was playing for a while then, but I don't think he naturally was a right back. So I think even Ollie, was it last year or the year before, he was referring to him and he was saying that he's an option, he could play for us in midfield. And I think it's hard when you're a young player if you're kind of being moved all over. You don't know yourself, your position. It kind of hurts your development. But there's a few things went into it, but he was another one I really rated when he first came through, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work out.
Yeah, 100%. And look, again, victim of circumstance, isn't it? And injuries and all these different things. But lads, it's been a very good podcast, a very good discussion.
I think it would be a shame
we've
if we
here.
didn't say Makeda as well, actually, because he won the league. Like,
yeah, that moment is legendary. Like whatever, regardless of what you think about his career, right? Regardless of what you think about Federico Makeda's career, that moment is etched in Manchester United history forever. Do you know what I mean? Like that moment is etched.
It's the fact that he put it up on Facebook the day before as well.
I didn't know that.
He put that up on Facebook. He said tomorrow's going to be a big day or something. I think he put up something like that. Another player as well that nobody ever talks about, Tom Thorpe. I don't know if you remember him. He was a centre half. He was a serious player.
He was playing with Michael. He came through on Michael Keane, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. Like there's so many good players that like just you'd forget about. Like you could name 10 players offhand, but it just shows you the step up. You know what I mean? Like they can be class banging in the goals. Like Charlie McNeil and Ugal, who we were talking about earlier on. Like we might never hear of them again. Hopefully we do. But after 21, 22, they could be down in the lower leagues. Earning a living playing football, but not to the level that we thought that they could aspire to be.
I think it's a lot of the order of how your career pans out, that a lot of players will come through at United and it'll be too big, too much too soon, where if you come through the smaller club and eventually you make that step to a bigger club instead of coming through the big club in the first place, I think it could work out better. Like a lot of it's just situation and circumstances that players are in. Like
100%.
But look, again, it'd be interesting to see how these players develop. And there's a structure there for these players to succeed. I think that's a very important cog that we need to kind of think about. Is that there's a structure there, and there's things in place for these players to succeed. Whether it's not United, but their development to be done at United, as Shane rightfully said, they can succeed elsewhere and have good careers. I think that's very important to think about. But thanks very much to both Shane and Dillon for coming on this evening for this recording of Away from the Cliff podcast. This is our first edition of this podcast. And as I said, this will be recorded once a week. And this first podcast will be uploaded to YouTube. But future podcasts the week commencing next week, we will have this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well for our listeners. And also just for everyone, just don't forget to hit like the video on your way out after you finish watching the show. To drop a comment on what you think. Let us know what academy prospects you always had high hopes for, and what you think about the kind of players, the academy players last season, and also just what you think overall tonight's show. But this will be continuing going forward. And again, very excited to kind of when the season starts and the games you start for the under-23s and the 18s. We'll not just be talking about general topics. We'll be diving into development of players, so reviews of games. Can't wait to talk about the FAU Cup and stuff like that when that gets going. Very excited to kind of diverge and kind of really go in depth with the academy this season, because again, it's a part of this football club where I believe it doesn't get talked about as much as it should. So look, again, very excited for this podcast to take off and just get kind of this out to people, because it's something that as Man United fans, we love the tradition of this football club, and it's something that should be discussed weekly. But thanks very much to the guys for coming on, and thanks very much for coming. 100%. And thanks very much to everyone for watching this. And also we will be back next week. So thanks very much, guys.